Now we begin here with our big story. The Pentagon preparing to retaliate for that drone attack that killed 3 U.S. service members in Jordan. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin today speaking about the need for a response in his first public remarks since keeping his recent hospitalization a secret.
We will take all necessary actions to defend the United States, our interests, and our people. And we will respond when we choose, where we choose, and how we choose.
Well, the White House now blaming the attack on an umbrella group of Iran-backed militias, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. That's the name. And what you're looking at right there on your screen are still images from videos that the group regularly posts online. Iranian proxies also attacking U.S. troops with increased frequency and attempting to control major shipping lanes in the Red Sea, where 2 Navy SEALs were also killed last month. Joining us now is our ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy from Tel Aviv, where he's been meeting with U.S. officials. So, Mick, thank you so much for being here. And let's start with this drone. We've learned here today that the drone that was part of this deadly attack was Iranian made. And so it's also the same kind of drone that is being used by Russia in Ukraine. And now that we have that information, what does that say to you about concerns of a wider conflict and bad actors all throughout the region?
Kana, the first thing it says to me is that it's not just Iran supplying weapons randomly to these groups as a sale, so to speak, but they're providing specific weapons that can attack our bases. They use them to attack our bases, and they continue to supply them. So that, to me, makes Iran complicit in these attacks. These are their proxies. They are using them to basically attack the United States, something they don't want to do directly because they don't want the consequences directly. But we will likely see the proxy forces get the consequences, and potentially these IRGC Quds Force officers, the Iranian officers that are embedded with these proxies, may also see the consequences of these actions. But something needs to change to get Iran to relook at their support for these groups and stop sending these type of drones, which are very deadly, both in Syria and Iraq, but as you point out, in Ukraine, where they are used all the time. And it's one of the most favorite weapons that the Russians are using because they're very low cost.
And also, Mick, our Martha Raddatz says that any retaliation from the U.S. would likely not include striking in Iran for fears of a larger regional conflict. But, Mick, it's been almost a week since that deadly drone attack. So what do you anticipate in terms of timing on retaliation? And does the U.S. need to consider moving more quickly here?
So I would definitely have advocated for moving more quickly, because I think this has, and maybe that was the intent, was allowing a lot of the Iranian personnel there to move themselves and their assets out of these identified, now publicly reported targets. I think perhaps it was to reduce the potential for Iranian casualties, but it certainly has given them the ample amount of time to do so. Part of it is the weather. I'm out here in the region, as you mentioned, and it has been raining almost nonstop since I've been here. So that could have also added to it. But I do think if I was advocating, I would have pushed to do it more quickly so that the Iranians would have more consequences. But of course, we, the United States, are trying to balance responding to these deadly attacks against our brave soldiers, but also balance that with not creating an escalatory response, which could lead to a direct conflict between us and Iran. And that is why I think, to your point, we don't think there's going to be targets struck inside Iran. But that doesn't mean Iranians couldn't be killed in these responses.
Right. And also, Mick, earlier today, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, quote, "I don't think the adversaries have a one and done mindset. And so they have a lot of capability." And then he ended that, Mick, by saying, "I have a lot more." But does the U.S. have intelligence that perhaps more attacks could be coming?
I assume that we do, and I assume just personally that they will keep coming. They made a statement, this Khatib Hezbollah, KH as we call them. They said, okay, we're going to stand down right now because they know the consequences are coming and because they killed some of our service members. But I think they will, of course, after some time, go back to attacking us. So I think what the U.S. wants to do is take all the opportunities to hit the supply lines, to hit the storage facilities, to hit the launching areas, and to hit the personnel that fires these weapon systems and knows how to use them. I think that's going to be why this is a phased response that'll happen over many days, because I think they're going to try to take all opportunities to eliminate, if they can, or at least significantly degrade the system in place that are used to attack our bases in Syria, Iraq, and now even Jordan.
We'll certainly have to do something more than deterrence. Also, Mick, you have been concerned about the northern front opening up between Israel and Lebanon. Our own James Longman watched as the IDF carried out what he described as unusual military exercise at the Lebanese border in what might be preparations for a conflict there with Hezbollah. What do you know right now?
So talking to, of course, people out here in the region, it's more clear to them, although I don't think they would like to see it, of course. It would be significantly degrading to their economy, that it's almost inevitable. Right now, there's around 70,000 Israelis that had to be pulled off the border, the Lebanese border, because of Hezbollah, which is in violation of UN Resolution 1701. They're still in hotels, quite frankly. And the Israelis will not send them back until they shove Hezbollah by force, if necessary, back to the Litani River, which is where they're supposed to be. So I think there is a potential that will happen, something the United States was definitely not wanting to see happen. And I don't think either Lebanon or Israel would like to see it happen, but it does seem to be moving in that direction. That would significantly expand this war and could draw the United States in to at least assist the IDF, as then they would be in two significant combat situations, with the northern front being then the most significant, because Hezbollah has way more capabilities than Hamas had even at the beginning of the conflict in Gaza. They have considerable precision-guided munitions that could really do damage to Israel.
All right, Mick Mulroy, thank you so much for your analysis. We appreciate it. And I want to bring our big story now to our panel. So joining us today is our ABC News contributor and Sirius XM radio host Mike Muse, our ABC News contributor and former Republican Congressman John Katko, and Democratic strategist Alincia Johnson, as well as our ABC News senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty at the Pentagon. So thank you all for being here. So, Ann, let's jump right into some of this reporting that we're getting into ABC News today from Martha Raddatz, saying that things are tense at the White House in regards to these retaliatory strikes here. So what more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. So she's been speaking with officials who say that the Pentagon advisors, that President Biden's top military advisors, have been pushing for this idea of multiple strikes, multiple countries, sending a substantial message to these Iran-backed militants that the U.S. means business. Of course, some aides in the White House agreeing, but others being very concerned that these retaliatory attacks will escalate tensions in the region. They say that they're watching two clocks. One is wanting to get these hostages out of Gaza. Two is, when is the U.S. going to strike? They don't want the latter to influence those hostage negotiations. Everything is just extremely tense right now. Kana.
And, you know, in the meantime, essentially the U.S. has been telegraphing this retaliatory strike. So, John, in anticipation of that, are you seeing any shifts in behavior from some of these bad actors in the Middle East?
Well, it does seem like they're trying to tone it down just a bit, You hear rhetoric, signals from Iran. They're telling the groups that if the U.S. retaliates against those groups, not to respond. And all of a sudden, you're hearing more and more discussion about a potential ceasefire with Hamas and possible hostages negotiations gaining steam. I think all this is because they may have finally concluded that they finally crossed the line that even this administration, which isn't real strong, it says enough's enough. They know what's coming. So I do think there's just a little hesitancy on Iran's part right now.
And that red line that we've been talking about so much for months now. Alincia, to you, earlier today, the White House announced 4 Israeli settlers would be sanctioned today for attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank. Is the White House talking about the wrong thing right now when you have some very damning allegations about a UN-affiliated aid group and their involvement in the October 7th attacks?
I don't think the White House is talking about the wrong thing. I think you're seeing the White House in real time in public grappling with multiple things being true at the same time in the Middle East. They do not want an escalation, as all of us have agreed to on this panel. No one wants an escalation in this tension in the Middle East, but they also have to have this conversation around what's happening to the Palestinian people, particularly as the Democratic base is overwhelmingly in support of a ceasefire. And how does the Biden administration talk about that, as well as still support their ally in the Middle East, but also show that they have some very real concerns about the way in which the Israeli government is handling the situation in Gaza. So you see them talking about multiple things at the same time, which can be confusing to a lot of us, but they're trying to do the best as they can.
Talking about multiple things at the same time, he's also running for president again. Mike, what is your take on these sanctions as President Biden heads to Michigan for some campaign stops?
Yes, absolutely. I think that President Biden has been listening to hit the base of a large part of his base of the Democratic Party, in particular as he is looking to win the state of Michigan, which is a battleground state. It's a state that he won only by 150,000 votes. A large percentage of the Democratic voters that went Biden's way are Arab Americans, and the Arab Americans are extremely frustrated on how he has handled the situation between Israel and Hamas. They feel like he has not come out in support of a ceasefire, and it is beginning to become hardened their views on him to where they're becoming more neutral on taking the position in their support of President Biden. And so I think it's very important that he has done that today, and particularly as he does a campaign stop to avoid the protest, which isn't good for visuals.
All right, Mike, John, Linsey, and Ann, our thanks to all of you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.